Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Scam Likely, where if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. I'm your host, Diana Ogilvy, with the Cobb County Sheriff's Office, and I'm here with Investigator Munoz, who is also with the Cobb County Sheriff's Office, who's been investigating frauds and scams for the past 18 years. So welcome to another episode.
Thank you.
Awesome. So today we are talking about elder exploitation and the different scams that fall under elder exploitation. So if you could define for us, what is elder exploitation?
Elder exploitation is when someone takes advantage financially of someone that's age 65 or that's been declared disabled. So that if they're disabled, the law allows for them to be younger. The age doesn't come into account. But if there's no disability, then it's anyone that's 65 or older that's taken advantage of to get at their finances.
All right, so in your experience, what are some of the scams that have been affecting the elderly in Cobb County?
A lot of the same type of scams that affect everyone, but if I said the ones that are more like geared towards the elderly are ones that one that's known as the grandparent scam, where they'll be contacted by someone pretending to be a family member, and they'll give them a scenario which can vary from a grandson that was involved in a car accident or was out of state and giving somebody a ride, and they got pulled over and drugs were found in the car, and they pretend like that they're in jail and they need for their grandparent to talk to somebody that they say is an attorney, and they hand the phone off, and that person begins to set up the scenario to get the grandparents to send money to get their family member out of a jam. But there is no jam. It's not their family member. And lots of times the methods that they request payment have varied and evolved over the years. Initially, when I started doing this, it was gift cards.
Okay, so like a Visa gift card.
Yeah, and then and around the same time also there was a time there where they were requesting that the grandparent go and get cash and put it into a box and FedEx it or UPS it to them, and they would meet them typically because they would get the tracking number. They would meet them at a public parking lot, like a little mini mall or something like that, and meet the driver. The driver would hand them the box, and they'd be gone. They'd disappear.
Wow.
And then.
So hold on. I mean, so many red flags for me.
Yeah.
So first of all, we talk about red flags when it comes to these scams, and the first one for me is the urgency, right?
Yeah.
And the pulling of at that emotions, like help, grandpa, this is Timmy. I need help because I've been arrested, or what would you say, like been pulled over?
An accident. They come up.
Been an accident.
They can dream up endless amounts of scenarios, but it's always to create a problem. Something has happened that caused them to end up in trouble with law enforcement, and they need to. There's a bond. They need to get out. They'll start to describe how there's unsavory characters in this jail that they're in. And get their grandparents concerned, and they might even be crying. Lots of times they won't sound like the family member because they don't know what the family member sounds like. But they'll come up with an excuse, like they'll say I was in it was a car accident and I broke my nose. I got a lot of gauze in my nose, grandma or grandpa.
So that's why it doesn't. That was gonna be like my next question. Like, why wouldn't grandma or grandpa recognize Timmy's voice on the phone? So the excuse is, if it was a car accident, and it makes sense. There's gauze in my mouth. I heard my jaw.
And you're dealing with the victims that are sometimes varying in age, but in all different stages of being elderly, and they might have problems already with their hearing is being affected, and even if they have a hearing aid, I've never used one, so I don't know if that distorts the quality of the sound, but they come up, they have a scenario, they have a backup story to deal with a lot because they do this all the time. That's what these scammers do for a living. So they develop a pretty sophisticated repertoire of responses to counter any questions that or pushback that they might get from their victims. and it's tragic.
It is quite tragic. So the other scam that falls under elder exploitation is the funeral scam.
Yeah, when when there's a death in the family, and that one sometimes crosses over to people not necessarily that are elderly, but to anybody,
Right.
because you're going through a very tragic time in your life when you just lost a dear one. So, most people are overwhelmed, is understandably so, and there's a level of low life that will exploit that weakness in someone's life, and call pretending to be the funeral home, and come up with an additional charge or something like that to get them to send money. And it used to be, and I don't know if it still exists because that type of crime doesn't come to us, but when growing up, I remember what criminals would do is that if you were going to a funeral, they would call your while everybody was out at the funeral home,
Yeah.
at the wake, somebody would go and rob the address because it would be announced in the paper.
Wow.
So I would still be cautious with that, and if you have something like that happen, have somebody be at home watching the house while you're dealing with putting your family member to rest.
Wow, that is crazy. But just to think about that. But yeah, so you are advertising, the death of a loved one, and people will use that and say, let's go rob them.
Yeah.
Wow, that is actually quite sobering. So for people, one of the tips that I know you speak about is to check in on your loved ones. And what are some red flags that we should look for if we're checking in on our parents and our grandparents?
Well, if you're checking in on your parents, your grandparents every day, the red flags can be obvious depending upon what type of relationship you have with them. But if you ask them about their banking or anything like that, if they start talking to you about that a check bounced and insufficient funds in their account, then you might want to start coming over and maybe looking at their account. If there's and go over their banking statements. If you start seeing transactions there that your family member doesn't recognize, it could be a sign that somebody's contacted them at some point and is extracting money from them without them knowing. They might have given somebody inadvertently access to the account, and by having that communication, those lines of communication open, you can find out about things before the account is emptied completely.
And also, if we look into the caregiver, so let's say if, I don't want to say power of attorney, but something like that is like they sign over privileges to their caregivers, those are...
It's good to have like a conservatorship set up where it's already established who's going to be responsible for taking care of mom and dad when they can't care for themselves. It helps keep strife between families and stuff from occurring if it's established that this is the person that's going to be responsible for doing that. And being appointed a conservator, it's not a license to steal. It's a responsibility that if you don't live up to it and somebody files a criminal complaint against you, you can get in a world of hurt, because you're when you become a conservator, you take on fiduciary type responsibilities, and the law looks on that kind of hard. When people violate that trust. There's no way to say for sure, this is the way to handle your elderly parents' affairs, because there's no way to do away with greed, and we see that all the time. I don't see people don't come to file a complaint with us when everything is in order and things are going along the way that
Right.
they should. We only get to experience, when families start doing things that are criminal,
Right.
to get at their inheritance before their loved one has while they're still here, which is sad and tragic all in its own.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to unpack there. So if we go back to the emergency call from little Timmy,
Hmm.
what would be the preventative measure or something that grandparents can do to make sure that this is Timmy, even if he has a gauze in his mouth and his jaw is broken or whatever excuse he comes up with?
That's a very good question. You always ask good questions. To to say that you can have a password, a family safe word that you give to your family members. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But you might not need that if you can ingrain in your loved ones to not answer the phone from unknown numbers. Because little Timmy, fake little Timmy or little Jane, whatever the name they're using, won't be able to, that call won't go through because it's going to come from an unknown number. It's not going to come from their actual family member. So if you can have repeat the discussion with your parents to get them on board, to be on the same page. And this goes for not just our elderly members of society. This goes for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I myself, I don't answer unknown numbers on my personal cell phone. People I know, like yourself, you're on there. If you call me, I'm answering the phone.
Right.
But if they're not already one of my contacts, they don't get to hear my live voice. They have one opportunity. You'll hear me say this over and over again. You have one opportunity to leave me a message, and then you can't create a false sense of urgency or an emergency on a message, because even if you try, I still have time to listen to it,
yeah,
and to think on it. And so,
research.
Exactly. And so that chops the legs out from a lot of scammers, because they don't have that ability to, if they can't get in touch with you, if they can't talk to you, then
right,
they can't run their game on you.
They can't scam you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's the number one preventative. Just don't answer unknown numbers at all.
And just to add, like, if you're thinking, well, I got caller ID, I can see, you can't trust your caller ID anymore.
Yeah.
It's obsolete, because they can make that caller ID read like it's the Cobb County Sheriff's Office calling you, and they
or
do.
The hospital.
Or a legitimate business,
Yeah.
a legitimate organization. So that's why I still say screen your calls. Unless you're in the middle of some type of an emergency and you're waiting on a very important phone call that's time sensitive, then maybe life's flexible and you can bend the rule. But as a permanent rule, develop the habit of not answering unknown calls.
Yeah.
And that'll greatly reduce your chances of coming in contact with scammers. Right now, I have currently as we speak, I have 2 scam attempts on my phone. And that'll be 4 for today alone.
Yeah, I had 2 today saying that I've been approved for a $63,000 loan.
Yeah, apparently I'm opening up all type of bank accounts and doing transactions with unknown banks. But it's all phishing stuff, and it's a hassle. There's no way for me to stop it from coming to my phone. But I don't have to open it up. I don't have to listen to it. I can delete it. If they want to go through the trouble of having some computer generate these things and spit them out to my phone, I'll keep deleting them.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you have it, folks. Basically, don't answer unknown numbers. I mean, if they can't get you, they can't scam you, right? But just in case, if you unfortunately have fallen victim to a scam in Cobb County, how do we report that?
Call the Cobb County Sheriff's Office at 770-499-4639.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Scam Likely, where if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Have a good rest of the day.